I'm joined now by my guest, and I'm so glad to have John Lott on the program with me. I got to say, I was struggling with some of the, some ideas, I guess, or some thoughts. I was just really troubled by these parents that were going to jail for their kids, and I got to be honest with you. Even as a talk show host, someone that comments on this type of stuff all the time, you want to make sure that your instincts are right. I mean, even sometimes, even though I can be a big mouth, I want to. I don't, just because I feel something doesn't mean that it's the right thing. But just common sense told me, intuition perhaps, it's like something about this isn't right. Lo and behold, I was doing literally, I texted the producer to my podcast, and I said, listen, we've got to get on Mark Walters, is what I said initially. And I said, I want to have a frank discussion. I don't believe these parents belong in jail. And then the next thing I know, I'm researching, and I check Zero Hedge, and John Lott writes this column, "Don't jail parents for school shootings, arm teachers." And I'm like, when John Lott says it, I know that I'm on the right track. John Lott, welcome to the program.
I'm flattered. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. John, listen, I got to tell you, I was kind of struggling with these thoughts, to be honest with you. I didn't hear a lot of conservatives talking about this, but I was like, I felt like there was something just wrong about this. And I'm like, I wasn't sure what crimes the parents had committed. And you wrote this column. You also did an interview recently with John Stossel, and I'm glad you did that. But talk to us about this a little bit. Don't jail the parents for school shootings, arm the teachers.
Right. Well, look, it's understandable that people want somebody to blame, and the parents seem like an obvious choice. The thing is, there are lots of other people involved in this situation. So a year ago, you had police go out to the home of the family in Georgia there and interviewed the young boy who ended up committing the murders. They could have arrested him, but they didn't. They asked him if he was the one who had put messages up on social media. He said he wasn't. They accepted his explanation that was there, and then they left. And the question is, let's say he told his father the same thing that he had told the police officers, and he told the police officers in front of his father that thing. Should the father have believed him any more or less than the police officers believed him?
Such a great point.
You have other things that are going on. You have experts at school or whatever that deal with these things. You look at the mass public shootings over the last 25 years, over half of the mass public shooters were actually seeing mental health care professionals prior to their attacks. And in not one single case did those mental health care professionals identify these individuals as a danger to themselves or others. And so you take something like the Crumley family in Michigan, who were the father and mother were sentenced to 10 years in prison because basically it was argued that they should have seen the problems with their son. Well, the son had seen the mental health care professional at school, the psychologist at school, and the psychologist at school hadn't identified him as a danger to himself or others. And so my question is, if these mental health care experts aren't able to go and identify these people as a danger, should the parents? Why should the parents necessarily be able to go and identify that? In some of these cases, you had international experts. In the Santa Barbara murderer's case, he was actually seeing the head of psychiatric services at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, a guy who's written many academic articles on identifying violent youth offenders. And he was unable to identify the person before the attack as a danger to himself or others. If you're going to blame people, it seems like there's lots of people to go and blame. But here's the bottom line to me, and that is it should be pretty obvious by now that we're not able to identify these individuals very well before they engage in their attacks. And so if you're not going to be able to identify most of these guys, what's your backup plan? And if you're talking about, if anybody who reads the diaries or manifestos for these mass murderers know that they overwhelmingly want to get media attention. Most of them want to commit suicide. And they know the more people they kill, the more media attention that they're going to get. And so these guys may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. They know if they go to a place where their victims are disarmed, in a gun-free zone, they're going to be able to go and kill more people and therefore get more media attention. And so, rather than having a school that has a sign in front that says this is a gun-free school zone, why not have a sign in front of the school that says select teachers and staff are carrying concealed and will use the guns to protect the students and others? Now, at the Georgia case, you have a situation where there was an armed security officer who was able to go and stop it. But what people have to understand is that these uniformed armed security officers have an extremely difficult task. It's kind of like, think of it this way. We have air marshals on planes. Do you think air marshals ought to be in uniform?
No, of course
nobody
not.
would think. Right, because you would give the terrorists tactical advantages because they know who they'd have to take out first. And the same thing is true with armed security officers. If somebody's in uniform, the attackers can either wait for the person in uniform to leave the area before they attack, or they can move on to another building, let's say inside the school, or who do they take out first? Because they know if the officer is the only person who's armed there and they take him out, they're going to have free reign to go after other people. The advantage of having concealed is that you take away those tactical advantages. So if you're going to put a school resource officer in a school, I plead, don't put them in uniform. Have them blend in, give them a staff position or something like that, so it's not readily obvious who it is that is going to be defending people there. And so, but it's just not schools. It's gun-free zones generally attract these guys. I don't know. One of my biggest pet peeves with the media is that they'll go and cover the diaries or manifestos for these mass murderers, but they leave out all the time the discussion that these mass murderers have for why they pick the targets that they do. Whether it's the Nashville school shooter. Right. You look at Nashville school shooter. She was planning on she looked at 3 other targets and turned them down and decided to go after the Covenant school because the other targets had, allowed concealed carry or whatever, and she was worried that she wasn't going to be successful. You look at the Buffalo mass murder the year before, the New York Times has run like 8 editorials on that case. Never once in any of their news articles or anything else do they mention that the guy has a long discussion about why he picked the target he did. He explicitly talks about not wanting to go to a place where people have permanently concealed handguns because he says that would make it much more difficult for him to successfully kill people. Why not once in a while? Isn't that newsworthy to cover once in a while why these guys pick the targets that they do?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a nefarious purpose behind it. Again, I'm speaking to John Lott. You got to make sure you check him out online. His organization, Crime Research Institute. I go on there frequently. Also, the author of More Guns, Less Crime. It's been updated, renewed. It's one of those books you just have to have on your shelves as a reference book. So make sure you go out and get it. John is going to stick with us for another segment. But I wanted to bring him on again to just talk about these parents that are being jailed. Guys, John makes a great point, and I encourage you to go out and read this column too. I would say I tweeted it out. I believe I did, but I don't have my phone on me. I accidentally left it home. But I want you to read it. It's on Zero Hedge. It's on Real Clear Politics. Don't jail parents for school shootings. Arm teachers. I think this is so important. If you're going to blame the parents, why not blame all of the people beforehand that did not catch the shooter? Why is it that the counselors, mental health counselors aren't being blamed? What about the police officers that went to this young man's house? The case that John Lott makes is again, simply, how can you blame the father when the experts couldn't catch this? And then what laws, what policies is this father that's being held now being charged with? Giving his son a rifle for Christmas? Are you kidding me? We'll be back. Hey, Carl Jackson here. You've asked, and MyPillow has listened. They're finally bringing you the most requested offer ever. Right now, you can get the queen size premium MyPillow for just $19.98. MyPillow is made with a patented adjustable feel. It adjusts to your exact individual needs, regardless of your sleep position. It helps to keep your neck aligned, and it holds its shape all night long, so you get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. You can get their 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets for just $25. The brand new mattress topper for as low as $69.98, and their famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25, and so much more. Go to MyPillow.com or give them a call at 800-858-0263. Use the promo code Carl, that's C-A-R-L, I don't spell it like the communists, to get huge discounts on all MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow for just $19.98. That's the lowest price ever. Don't delay. Order today. Use promo code Carl at checkout. All right, welcome back to the program. Again, I'm joined by my guest, John Lott. You can find him on X at John R. Lott Jr. At John R. Lott Jr. He spells his last name with 2 T's. Also, my mistake, he's from the Crime Prevention Research Center. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Check out his website, crimeresearch.org. 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 And again, I'm talking to John about this article that he wrote, and I'm so glad that he wrote it. And honestly, John, I'm just so glad that you're out there. We need a voice like yours out there that's going to protect and stand up for the Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment. And I know that's not where your life was originally, but I believe that God has you here for a purpose. I truly do. I truly do believe that, John. Let me go back to this issue with the parents, and then I want to go back to gun-free zones, because I want to make sure that we make this loud and clear. Even going back to the Crumleys. Let me just give you this example, and then I'll let you take it from there, John. I remember I moved from Los Angeles to Orlando, Florida. I mean, back in '93. Went back to LA for some time, but eventually came right back to Orlando. When I first moved out here as a teenager, trying to escape some junk I was into in California, I came out here, John, and I would see teenage boys all over the place. Their pickup trucks, guns everywhere. Everybody had a gun, a shotgun or a rifle right in the back of their pickup trucks. John, I came from LA. I came from the hood. I was like, man, I was like, these fools are crazy. But you know what, John? I never messed with any of those cats. I was like, if they are armed, I'm not doing anything. And honestly, it ended up being a much better environment for me, and I'm still here to this day. Less crime, more guns.
Right. Yeah, just before I get into that, I just want to say I don't argue Second Amendment type things. What got me involved in the debate and what keeps me involved is what makes people safer. That's the bottom line concern for me. Does freedom and safety go together? In this case, yeah. But the bottom line to me is what makes people safer. And the point that you're bringing up, I think, is an important one. If my research convinces me of anything, there's basically 2 groups of people who benefit the most from having guns. People who are the most likely victims of violent crime, which tends to be poor blacks who live in high-crime urban areas. I mean, it'd be great if police were able to protect everybody all the time, but police virtually always arrive on the crime scene after the crimes occurred. And the question is, What's the safest course of action for somebody to take when they're confronted by a criminal? And the second group of people who benefit the most are people who are relatively weaker physically. You're almost always talking about a young male criminal doing the attack. And when a man is attacking a woman or an elderly person, there's a lot larger strength difference that exists there than when a man is attacking another man. And the presence of a gun for somebody who's weaker physically represents a much bigger relative change in their ability to go and protect themselves and prevent bad things from happening. And I was chief economist for the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and I must have read over 1,000 trial transcripts. And what you see time after time is these criminals, they're not stupid. If they go after easy targets, if they, you'll see in testimony, we were talking about going after a drug dealer because he has lots of money, but we decided it was pretty crazy because the drug dealer has lots of guns. And then we saw this, small woman walking across a parking lot late at night by herself, and she looked like a really easy target. So we went after her. And so what you do is, if you can reduce crime by making it riskier for criminals to commit crime. And you can do that in many ways. You can have higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates, longer prison sentences. But you can also reduce it by making it riskier because victims are able to go and protect themselves. And so, if you want to reduce crime, then in those areas where the crime is highest, those are the people that you have to make sure are going to be able to go and defend themselves. And one of the ironies that I see right now is that the same people who don't want to convict criminals, who want to cut police budgets, who make it more difficult for police to go and do their job, and therefore make it less risky for criminals to commit crime, are also the same people who are in favor of strict gun control laws. So many of these gun control laws make it particularly costly and difficult for the very people who benefit the most, poor people who live in high crime urban areas, from being able to go and protect themselves and their families.
Yeah, it's absolutely astonishing to me. John, I got to ask you, what crime did the father of this Georgia shooter, and I understand this is a touchy subject for some people out there, but if you really want to make people safer, as John Lott mentioned, if you really want to make people safer, then the answer is hardening the schools, not arresting parents. I feel like this is a way, even though you say your mission is to make people safer, John, I got to say, I feel like the mission of those that seem to be anti-2A is to undermine 2A, take as many guns from people as possible, and that's proven to be ineffective. And I feel like that's exactly what they're doing with parents. If this father bought a rifle for his son, the experts couldn't figure out that his son was crazy, so he buys a rifle, and I understand the argument. Okay, the police came, his dad shouldn't have done it. Okay, maybe his dad shouldn't have done it, but did he break a law by doing it? And I don't think that he did, John.
Look, you have different standards that the police could have acted on in making a decision whether or not to take the boy into custody. Obviously, if they thought he had committed a crime, that's one thing. But there are other laws in Georgia and all the other states called civil commitment laws. If an officer has what's called a reasonable probability, which is like a 20% chance that the person is a danger to themselves or others, they can take them in for a mental health care evaluation. And if the mental health care experts believe that there's a reasonable chance, again, 20% chance or so, that the person is a danger to himself or others, there can be an immediate hearing. And evidence will be provided at that point. The experts will testify. And if the judge concludes that the person is a danger to themselves or others, then the judge has a wide range of options. He can go and say, look, if you go and get outpatient treatment, we'll have you come back in a week or two and we'll reevaluate the situation. He could take away the person's guns. He could go and take away their driver's license if he's worried that the person's going to drive a car through a crowd. He can go and involuntarily commit the person in the most extreme thing.
Sure.
But it's relatively low level of evidence that they need to go and start the process on that. And the issue is, if these police presumably talked to lots of criminals, that these guys were not new officers, they've had a fair amount of experience. And if this young man says, I didn't put up those social media posts, and the police don't think that there's even a 20% more than 20% probability that he did,
John, hold that thought. If you could just stick with me for one more segment, hold that thought. I want to make sure that you finish that up and a couple more questions on this other side with John Lott Jr. All right, welcome back to the program. Again, I'm joined by my guest, John Lott Jr. or John R. Lott Jr. You can find him on X at John R. Lott Jr. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Make sure you check out that website. Help him out as well. crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. And John, before we went to the break, you were talking about the things that the police officers could have done to this young murderer in Georgia. So I want you to finish that thought, but also I want to talk to you about, is crime really down? Like I'm hearing a lot of people on the left say in America. They say, hey, FBI stats show that crime is down. I'd love for you to speak to that. And again, I just want to drill down a little more on defensive gun use in America and some of these trans shooters that we've seen recently. But if you would go back to the point that you were making about this Georgia shooter, 14-year-old, and I hate calling him a shooter because I know you're coming from it and thanks for that clarification, from a point of safety. But for me, I want safety, but also I'm looking out in the political realm for people that I believe are trying to undermine the Second Amendment. And what better way to undermine the Second Amendment, in my opinion, than to tell dads, hey, you're not going to, or scare dads into buying rifles for their kids when the vast majority of kids aren't going to go out and do what this kid did. And then you bring up a next generation of kids that are just like, I don't want anything to do with firearms, when firearms keeps America safe.
Right. Well, no, I agree with you. I think they're trying to scare parents into not allowing guns around. And I think, as you say, the implication for that is going to be less safety. So one of the things that they want to push are things like locking up guns, requiring that people lock them up. The thing is, if you make it so that people can't get access to their guns, what you see is that criminals actually become emboldened to attack people in their homes and are more likely to be successful. We have data on what's called hot burglaries across countries. Hot burglaries are burglaries that occur while the residents are in the home. In the United States, we have about half the burglary rate that a country like the UK has. But not only is their burglary rate twice as high, 60% of the time that burglars break into people's homes in the UK, the people are at home when the burglars break in. In the United States, it's 13%. And also related to that, when burglars break in the UK, they break in the evening when people are at home, whereas burglars in the United States tend to break in the middle of the day when people are likely to be away at work or just out doing something else. And American burglars, even though they pick the times when people are less likely to be home, they spend about twice as long casing a home before they break in order to make sure nobody's there compared to their British counterparts. And the reason that they give is they're worried about getting shot. And one way to protect yourself from not being shot is to make sure nobody's home there to do the shooting when you try to break into their home. In Britain, they like breaking in the evening because they want the people at home. And the reason why they want them at home is, let's say somebody has a safe or they've hidden jewelry someplace in the home. Then you can go and essentially force them to open the safe or to tell you where the valuables are hidden in the home there. The American burglars forego getting that additional information. But look, you bring up other important questions here about, one of the big claims we hear in the media these days, and we heard it in the
We got about a minute and a half, John.
Sure. Was that the FBI shows that crimes are down. Now, if Muir had said reported crimes are down, that at least would be somewhat accurate. But there are two measures that we have of crime from the Department of Justice. One is the FBI's count of reported crimes to the police, but then we also have a measure of total crimes from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And while the FBI in 2023 showed about a 3% drop in violent crimes, the National Crime Victimization Survey has shown from 2000 to 2023 a 55% increase in
Wow.
violent crimes. And what's happened is that as law enforcement has collapsed in this country, as arrest rates have gone down to historic lows, people are less willing to go and report crimes to the police. We've known for a long time, if people don't think the criminals are going to be arrested or punished, they're less likely to take the time to go and report crimes to police. And it's also become more difficult to report crimes because in many parts of the country, you call up 911 and they'll ask you, is it an emergency? Is the criminal still there? And if he's not, they'll tell you, you have to now come down to the police station to have a police report filled out.
Oh, my. John, listen, I'm sorry. We have to leave it there. I mean, go check them out, please. Crimeresearch.org. John R. Lott Jr., the president of Crime Prevention Research Center. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.